Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Upper Darby Township Planning Commission meeting for August 8th of 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and it is about 7:05. I think we're okay with the visual roll call. Everyone's in attendance tonight, so everyone's here. We definitely have a quorum. Would anyone like to offer corrections to or make a motion for approval of last meeting's minutes? We did not meet in July, so these would be the minutes from June.
I move we accept the meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we at this point have no communications or bills to take care of, so we can speed right into tonight's land development, which will be a presentation on a project on South 69th Street for a new Burger King. If you could just say a little bit about yourself, tell us a little bit about the project. You don't need to go through every detail of the back
Okay.
and forth communications, but whatever highlights you want to point out to us.
Sure.
And Josh will probably put some stuff up on the screen there.
Great. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name is Matt Chartrand. I am with Bowler Engineering, work out of our Bethlehem office. I was just giving my longer history. I worked in our Chalfont office, but I've been working for Bowler for 23 years doing land development of various types, primarily this type of retail development, although we're doing more and more industrial because everyone's ordering off of Amazon and and continuing to do so. So, again, I am a registered PE in the state of Pennsylvania. I've been so since 2005 and around this type of development. So we've been working with Burger King franchisee for probably the last 5 or 6 years, going through their current inventory of stores that they have, trying to, bring them up to kind of, they call it the newer standards, rehabbing a lot of their facilities, adding drive-throughs, doing double drive-throughs because everyone's in a hurry, and trying to do things in that manner. So that franchisee that we worked with, which operated under Family Dining and U.S. Restaurants, was purchased last year by a group, Ampler Development, in this case going by AB3, I think is what the application is under. But they own a bunch of different locations across the country. And this is actually one of the first that we're doing with them for a new ground-up store. Everything else, like I said, had been kind of rehabbing their existing facilities. They continue to do that. But this was a location that they came across through brokers or such that they were interested in and wanted to take a go at this. We have gone through the zoning hearing board to get some relief that we needed for the development, and that was granted probably 2 or 3 months ago, I guess, that we were at the zoning hearing board. Then we subsequently filed the land development. This is obviously our first time here before you guys this evening. Appreciate your time. Appreciate everyone coming out. I know the summer's difficult to get everyone together, get a quorum, so I do appreciate it. But up there on the board is a copy of our land development plans. We've got a full set, running from our existing conditions and landscape plans, lighting plans, grading plans, so on and so forth. I guess if you could just maybe pull up the site plan itself, and I can just kind of talk through that. So location, is everyone familiar with this location? Okay.
What's the corner street?
It's Patterson Avenue, 69th and Patterson.
Okay, what's there now, Josh, or? The Pearl Vision building? Okay.
Yeah, it's been vacant for I don't know how long.
Okay.
It's not in great condition, I know that much.
Yep.
It's next to the
Okay, I know
Wawa.
where it is. Okay, I'm just trying to get my bearings.
Across from the Popeyes, next to the Wawa.
Yeah, shop.
Pearl Vision. The chain of, yes, yeah.
I thought you said prohibition.
I heard the same the first time. But yeah, so former Pearl Vision location, like I said, the building has been vacant and somewhat of disrepair. I would hope that the township is anxious to get someone in there that's going to take care of that lot and breathe some new life into that corner. So yeah, immediately adjacent to Plan West, I'm just going to refer to that as West, is the Wawa, existing Wawa building that's there right now. The lot itself is largely paved. There's really only one area towards kind of the very back corner where it narrows down. It's a triangularly shaped lot, which leads to a lot of the difficulties in our layout in trying to make this work. Yeah, so you can see there where there's some existing tree line along the back and green space there, which we're really trying to maintain as much as possible. That's our closest neighbors, if you will, from a residential standpoint. So we're trying to maintain that and keep everything up towards the front. But like I said, really the shape of the lot lends it to where we kind of have to site the building, where we have to put some of the driveways, where we have to have our drive-through, the parking and everything else. We looked at this probably 10 different ways to try to figure out, if there was a better layout, and this is where we landed. So we think if we had a clean slate and a rectangular lot, we might be able to do a little bit more with it, but we think that we're able to accomplish what we need to accomplish here and functionally make it a little bit better. If you scroll back up a little bit, or maybe just if you can get sort of the whole site there, we are going to be adding, I'm sure my red pointer won't work on the screen. No, it never does. Someone told me that green, if you can get a green laser pointer, that green will work on the television. So I gotta get a new one here. But we are adding some green space out towards the corner there. And there will be kind of a small stormwater management area and like I said, some green space. We're gonna have a small rain garden just to be able to address the stormwater before it leaves the site. We also know that this area is prone to flooding and is a significant concern. So part of what we had to do in order to make this development work was raise the building and fairly considerably from where the existing Pearl Vision is today, several feet higher. That's led to some, grading challenges as it relates to the driveways and the area around it. Obviously, once we get to the parking areas and crosswalks, we have to meet ADA requirements. So there, we're all within the standards that are required there. But some of the relief that we are asking for as it relates to waivers do come down to the narrowness of the lot, the elevation that we're dealing with in trying to get this done, and just, trying to kind of fit it all in as best we can. And again, the variances that we were asking for were very similar, and I think that board understood that to redevelop a site like this with the challenges in front of us, that it was going to take some relief in order to be able to get there. So, functionally, we have one driveway on 69th Street. It's approximately at the location of the existing, there's actually two driveways out there right now on 69th Street, one that's closer to the intersection that we're going to be closing, and then we're going to keep the one driveway where we have it shown here, which, like I said, basically aligns with where the current driveway is today.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Is there any chance that we could do a full screen and make this a little bit more, for those of us who are?
Zoom in a little more.
That's the, can you make it full screen? And, does the mic that's near the screen work? Yeah. Is that all? Yes.
You want me to go over there and point from over there? Sure. I'll go wherever you want.
It's not closed?
So this is actually a good one to, can you guys hear me okay? And I can just speak loud if the microphone, okay. All right. So this is the existing conditions plan that's in our plan set here. So you can see now, this is the former building that was talked about, the Pearl Vision. two driveways where we have that line kind of shown. That's sort of the limit of the area that we are disturbing and the area that we're touching. So we've got the one driveway here, which is going to close, and then we've got the one driveway here, which is going to remain open and be reconfigured slightly.
That's the
Is that better?
69th Street side.
Correct. Yep. That's the 69th Street side.
Before, one question before you, is 69th Street a township road or is
69,
it is a state?
yeah,
Okay.
69th Street is.
So
is a-
PennDOT does have to approve all the driveway?
Correct,
Okay.
yes. So we've had some preliminary discussion with PennDOT. We have Traffic Planning and Design is our traffic engineering firm that's working with us on this. So they're handling the highway occupancy permit application. And they've had some preliminary discussion. They showed, our initial plan to them, what we were proposing to do. And at least, the feedback that we got was that they were on board with it. So not to say that there won't be some changes along the way and that they might ask for, other types of improvements. But as of right now, they felt strongly about closing the driveway, obviously closer to the intersection from a safety perspective and locating the other one where we have it. So again, parking, you can see right now, there's striped parking that's there. If you actually look at an old aerial of the site, you can see that they parked even along this side, right up against the Wawa, even though that I guess maybe technically wasn't striped for parking. But the macadam and paved areas I talked about really comes all the way back into this corner of the site. And pretty much everything besides just this little bit here at the corner is asphalt today. So we're, like I said, trying to do what we can to beautify the site a little bit, add a little bit more green space where we can, and functionally just hopefully make it a lot better of a layout. So if you-
The tree line or bush line or however green space,
Mhm.
that's going to butt up against the residential?
Yeah, so the area back here to, Plan South, which I guess is probably technically west, north is pointing this way. So to our west here is a residential area. So the green area that we have here, the trees that you see there now, we're proposing to maintain those trees and then add, some more green space to that area at the back. If you kind of switch over, I don't know if you want to go straight to the landscape plan, I can talk through that.
And there's no greenage in the front?
There was a little bit, but there will be even more. It's going to be, like I said, a rain garden, but it'll be planted. It's not going to look like you could see. So the rain garden's going to have, trees around it. It's going to have shrubbery and bushes within it. It's all basically to try to take up whatever water we can that runs down and ultimately drains down to that portion. So we've got our trash enclosure at the back of the site. Again, functionally, it's where it really makes the most sense for it to be, so the trash truck can come in off of 69th. They come straight forward, make their pickup, and then come directly out the side, back out to Patterson Avenue. We are proposing to add some more trees in there, a row of shrubbery around to try to screen the enclosure so that it will be at least minimizing that impact. And then around the building in any areas that we have, this is the drive-through area. So we do have a double lane to our drive-through. So you'll be able to pull in, start in a single lane, split 2 order points, and then they come back together to pick up along the eastern side of the building and then ultimately exit back out of the site. So again, adding some trees along the western portion or northern portion of our site adjacent to Wawa. One of the things that we did talk about with your engineer was trying to add some pedestrian connectivity out to 69th Street. The challenge is the grade, is really what it comes down to. But we have said that we'll do what we can to make that work. Our thought is that we could bring some form of sidewalk up through here. It may require some stairs. So from an ADA accessibility standpoint, the ADA ADA path that we have is really coming off of Patterson Avenue here, where we have a slight jog in the sidewalk, a crosswalk getting to the back of the building, and then ultimately around to the main door. So there is an ADA path, it just likely won't be directly from 69th Street. Yes?
The parking that's planned east of the structure,
Here?
yeah, if you're leaving, I guess if you're getting out of that space, you have to circulate back around, right, to be able to exit onto, like, it's one way, right?
It's a one-way circulation around the building, which is typical for most of the fast food, right? You've got, drive-through right up tight to the building, and, that flow makes sense in order to keep everyone moving that way. But if you were leaving that space, you would be able to back out the drive-through lanes over here. There's enough width, I think we have 18 feet behind those cars so that they can pull out and they can exit right
Oh,
here.
that's an exit as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Entrance and exit.
Okay. Alright.
And one of the things that we did talk about was we have right now designated 2 lanes so that you can, if you needed to loop the building, you could kind of stay independent from anyone that was exiting. But we did talk about potentially trying to narrow that up from 24 feet down to maybe 18 feet in order to try to gain some more play with the elevation that we're dealing with there. Because even this sidewalk around the front of the building is going to be raised from that driveway because of just how much we had to get that building up above in order to stay out of the floodplain.
But the 2 lanes that are planned west, I guess, or whatever, north, those 2 lanes are basically, they both feed into the 2 separate order lanes, right? That you can, so if you,
So you have the lane for the drive-through will be up against the building. It doesn't split until you get down here. Then you can split to the 2 order points. 1 order point here, 1 order point here, and then it merges back together around the side. The lane outside that where you see that second arrow, that's a bypass. So that's for people to be able to get around. Yeah, so functionally, I could just tell you, I've done enough of these that it just doesn't work if you only have, 1 lane and people get clogged up and are waiting for drive-through customers and everything else. So, that was very important. This lane, I think, is just slightly narrower than the 15 feet that's required. We have 14 feet. That's one of the waivers that we're asking for. And again, we have tried to look at this every single way, and literally every inch, foot matters on this site. So this lane is 14, but we felt it was better to keep this lane over here a little wider because you do have vehicles that are going to be entering, and this would be, a right turn only as you're coming in off of Patterson Avenue. So you come in, you make that sweep, and then you could come, if you were trying to get to the drive-through, you come around the front of the building and then queue there. You could circle all the way back around and exit. But, so you do have options on either side. The configuration of the driveway along Patterson Avenue is really due to trucks. We will have deliveries, obviously, that we're going to need to get in. We're going to have trash trucks that are going to need to get in and get back out. So the alignment, we wanted to make sure, A, that we didn't have an entrance that was this close up because people who aren't paying attention will come into a site and think, I got to get to the drive-through and try to, loop around. So that's why the entrance driveway is kind of set where it is. But the exit driveway was set here and made as wide as it is in order to be able to get that tractor trailer out safely. This island that we have in between is going to have mountable concrete on either side. So it's like a sloped curb so that if a truck or vehicle does run over it, it won't be as impactful as hitting a vertical curb at that location. Again, one of the things that we talked about was just trying to see, are there any other improvements that we could make to that? And we're certainly happy to look at that the way that we have it here today.
and the trucks will enter in on 69th Street, circulate and back
Yep.
into that.
Yeah, basically come in, and they're gonna pretty much have to stage somewhere back here along this back portion, so they'll come in. Typically, it's off hours. The hours of this store, I think they're not slated to be 24 hours, but if it's doing great business and they have an opportunity, they might look at that in the future if that becomes a possibility. And obviously, if the township is okay with that, I'm not aware of any specific restriction in the code towards it. But as of right now, I think their hours would, be that they would close somewhere around midnight, open back up around maybe 6 a.m. So typically, they try to bring those trucks in off hours or as late as possible while they still have staff there so that they can kind of get the stuff in and get them out fairly quickly. They don't want the truck showing up in the middle of the lunch hour or anything else either because, it just impacts their business.
What about noise abatement?
Well,
That I know that those trucks, when they're picking up trash, when they're loading out, it's pretty noisy, and there are people that live back there.
sure. Yeah, I mean, part of that will be, the setback that we do have from the residential, albeit, it's not going to be soundproof, right? But we are going to have some additional landscaping in there, some additional trees, additional shrubbery to try to maintain that. It is a commercial lot, and I think pretty much any type of commercial activity that you're going to have there is going to have a trash enclosure, is going to have deliveries. I think, frankly, for a use like this, typically the trash is coming maybe once or twice a week, deliveries maybe once or twice a week. So we're not talking about every day, every morning kind of thing or whatever. And they do try to be good neighbors and try to be as respectful as they can, to not be, out there slamming dumpsters up and down and everything else and trying to make it as seamless as possible. They've been doing this.
Of course, that's not the case for mine, but they slam dumpsters at 2 in the morning and they have no qualms about it, so.
Yeah.
I don't know how many trash people you know, but the ones I know, they don't care about that.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly from their delivery standpoint, I mean, the trash trucks, they don't own, right? They're going to contract that out. So they can certainly talk with delivery drivers and try to, make arrangements for certain times, but they don't have as much control as they do over their own deliveries. So their own deliveries are coming through their services. They can schedule when they're going to be there. They can schedule the time so that you're not, and again, not like there's going to be a significant, I think they're going to just pull in and park. So I don't think you're going to hear a significant amount of beeping and backing up, and there's just not that much area on this site to do that. But, it being a commercial use, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat and say, this thing's going to be silent. But we do think that there's enough measures there to try to mitigate as much as we possibly can with what we have going on. The shrubbery in and around here where the speaker posts are and where the ordering points are, they have refined that quite a bit from back in the days, of just the squawk box, if you will, for lack of a better term. But just, the speakers are better, the sound quality's better. They're able to kind of dial that down. They've got, typically they have a pre-sell board, pre-menu board that has some items on it, and then they've got a main screen that's there. And we went through this with the zoning hearing board as well, but the screens are like televisions now. They're not like the changeable copy stuff that we had in the past. It's a television so that they can instantly change from breakfast to lunch or whatever particular offerings they might have. But the idea is to try to keep people moving. Like I said, we're in a society now where people just want to be on the go all the time. So less seating indoors, more towards the drive-through.
What is the seating indoors? How many seating?
I want to say it's around 60 to 70 seats that they ultimately have
What's a
inside.
typical one in the
That-
ones you built?
Yeah, it's actually a little smaller. This is one of their smallest footprints because of just the nature of the site. Like I said, what we're dealing with. The original plan that we had that we tried to fit in was a slightly larger building than this. But ultimately, they felt that they could still make the site work once we said, you're just not going to get that building on here. So we did go down. This is what they refer to their ROC 60 building that is one of their smallest.
So do they ever just do one drive-through? That way you'd have a lot more space in the back for the neighbors?
They, on occasion, but I will tell you that in all the renovations that we're doing for all their existing sites, that is the renovation that we're doing, is adding a second drive-through. So,
But they're bigger locations.
well, yes and no. Some of them are old stores that have been there for ages. Not necessarily that they're bigger size-wise, it's just that the migration is really towards the drive-through facility now. It's well over 50% of their business is through the drive-through. They do have some locations that are existing that still have an indoor play space to them, and some of the ones that we renovated, they actually renovated that space as well. Those are the ones that do tend to draw more people inside, people with kids and want to go sit for a little while and let the kids play for a half an hour before they get out of there. But typically, the indoor space is just not as much utilized for seating in the fast food.
Yeah, but like to your point about, this is not a typical location. There's no way to shift it a little bit. I just think that there's gonna be a lot of noise. The people that live back there have had nothing. That's been closed for 10 years. And before that, it was a medical office closed at 6 o'clock at night or whatever.
Yeah.
So I just think that, maybe I'm the only one that thinks that's gonna be a problem, but I feel bad for
Oh,
those people, like you're saying.
I think it's going to be an issue.
They're
Well-
gonna smell, half of them are
The,
vegans
the
back there.
smell and the noise.
They're gonna smell beef, and they're gonna hear trucks, and you say it's not that big of a noise still, until it's your baby 1 in the morning, that the truck wakes up.
Listen, I understand that. I do. Like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can't sit here and look you in the face and say, there's not going to be any impact. There's going to be some impact. Now, if you look at 69th Street and the amount of traffic that's going up and down 69th Street through all hours of the day and night, is this going to add that much more noise over what, they may already be hearing coming from 69th Street and their proximity to it? I can't say, but this is a commercial corridor. It's what it's intended for by your ordinance, by the zoning that's placed there. And I don't know, besides maybe a bank, that you're going to get something else that's going to have significantly less of an impact to it. We're trying, like I said, to be as cognizant of it as we can. We've pushed everything as far up towards 69th Street as we possibly can, to the point that we have a retaining wall up here along the front that this is jammed up against. Like I said, the reality is, to make something like this work with as challenging a site as we have, this is where we are.
Would removing the second drive-through aisle even solve that problem though? Because wouldn't you have to, I can't remember maybe you guys could tell me, but the dumpster and the trash has to be a certain distance from the building, right? Or would removing that even change that aspect of it?
It would have a minimal impact, I guess, from the standpoint, I think we're right at the parking count that we're required to have, which is somewhere around 17 parking spaces, I think, that's split on both sides of the building. The parking that we've located here is really in the flattest portion of the site, but it's, still some challenging grade there. So we do have a short wall along the side here that we're dealing with. Again, from a proximity standpoint, I think what you're alluding to, in that even if we were to remove this, we wouldn't be able to take that corresponding distance and shove it up that much further. It's just really how this site lays out when you look at the triangular piece that we're dealing with here. They may, if it's late at night, I can't say for sure, but I do know that they have done this at other locations, depending upon how much traffic they have. If they needed to, they could potentially cone off the outside one. If it was, late at night and they didn't have a lot of traffic coming through, they could try to push people towards just the one. But again, the idea behind the double drive-through lane is not to double the capacity. It's just to move people through faster. So if you're behind, you just want to go in and get a Whopper, and the minivan in front of you is loaded up and they have a long order, it's just giving you, yeah, it's just giving you another option.
I get to come to the drive-through. I'm
Sure.
just thinking of the poor neighbors, that's all. That's why we're here, is to think of the people.
Right, so what zoning relief did you apply for?
I think it's listed in the letter from Mr. Galante's office. There was a side yard setback, and I think the side yard setback was here. So again, where the lot, it's very difficult to see. There's a dash line right here
Right.
that follows. That is our building envelope because of where
So the side yard setback relief is towards the street or towards another commercial property, it wasn't towards the residence?
Correct, it was
Okay.
towards the street.
Okay.
We didn't obtain or ask for any relief. You can see there's a 25-foot parking setback
Okay,
all the way to here, and we're nowhere near it.
okay,
So we're, I can't tell exactly, but I could tell you that we're well over 100 feet even to the back of where our trash enclosure is today. The paving today, like I showed before, comes all the way back into this area back here. We're going to be increasing that green space.
okay.
So, yeah, there may not be a trash enclosure that they have there, but there is paving all the way out to this back edge right in here right now. So we're actually going to be adding some green area back there. Some more trees, some more bushes, some more attempt to screen this.
Okay.
Did you obtain zoning relief for the stacking requirements? I thought I saw that in the materials.
That's correct.
What's the stacking capacity from, I guess, the order window? I guess let's just use the inside one for now, the inside order window to 69th Street. Do you know that? How many cars would you say?
Yeah, I think what we looked at is we can fit from the window, so you've got
Not the window, the order, I don't know what the technical term.
from the order point itself.
Yeah, the box.
Yeah, so from here back, I think we had 5 or 6 on the inside one, and then another 2 just to that point. I think when you look overall, so typically what they have is they've got a pickup window and a pay window. So again, all about trying to move you through a little bit faster so that you pay here. Oop. You pay here, you pick up here, and then you keep going. I think if you look at the capacity, if you look at the capacity from, this point all the way back, I think we were like over 12 vehicles that can stack within that space.
Can you show me where the
Bikes are, the bike rack.
Yeah, so that was one of the things that we talked about. As of right now, on this plan, we're not showing a bike rack. My thought is that where we have this crosswalk here coming from this side, we could put a bike rack directly adjacent to that. Again, potentially, if you felt that it was more appropriate or you'd rather have it out more towards the 69th Street side, where we extend the sidewalk along here, we could find a place for it. There's definitely a place for it. We just didn't have it located on our initial plan.
Are there bike lanes on Patterson?
I doubt it.
Okay. But there are on 69th Street? Yes, no?
I don't know if there are in that location.
This location.
Might be across the street, I think, maybe. I don't know. It's definitely in the planning. We're always looking to put new bike lanes in whenever we have, and not repave the road.
Mhm.
We're always adding new bike lanes. We're working with PennDOT to do so.
So, yeah, we're happy to add that wherever it makes sense, and we'll work through the details of that with your engineer.
What's the total square footage of green space with the rain garden and the back greenage?
Could you go back to the site plan? It should be,
I make up my own terms for greenage. I don't know if it's an acceptable term. Probably never ever heard of it.
next one here, okay. Any chance you can zoom in a little bit more on the district requirements. I think I can read it, but. Down in this area. There we go, okay. So impervious coverage on the site, allowable is 70%. That's paved surface, not green space. So think of the flip when we're talking about this, right? 30% green space, 70% impervious. Existing is 82.5 roughly %.
So you're reducing that?
We're bringing that down to about just under 64% impervious. So we're increasing the amount of green space here. And for a site of this nature, you know, it looks like it's around 6,500 square feet of green space that we're adding, which is pretty substantial. So that was one that we were able to bring into compliance with this plan, which again, I think the zoning hearing board was happy to see as well.
And no outdoor seating, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And what'd you say?
No outdoor dining.
Yeah, we don't have room for it. They do that at a few of their locations, but not many. It's not primary for Burger King.
So if I'm doing the numbers, it's gonna be at 35% of the space will have greenage about? Is that
Yeah.
about what you said?
Yep.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. Well, that's nice.
Yeah, so if you talk about, you know, even looking through some of these other ones, you know, again, some of them we had to, obviously, where we're adding some parking or some other things where we needed variances from, you know, side yard setback where we had the parking along that west side was a little closer, but, you know, when you look at like the rear buffer yard, right? Minimum required buffer yard, 10 feet, existing 27, we're at 75.8. So that's that area that you're talking about adjacent to the residential. That's an area that we're expanding fairly significantly beyond where the encroachment is towards it today.
I'm sorry, just one more time, can you show me the ADA access?
Sure.
And
you
Mike,
zoom back out?
Mike, I have a question.
Yes.
So at some point, as things change, like in Philadelphia and stuff, where more people are biking and busing and et cetera, walking, they reduce the parking. I mean, like the 17 parking spaces, if half the businesses drive-through, maybe they need less parking.
I think the way they laid out the site was what they were trying to minimize the amount of variances that would be required. If they reduced the number of parking spaces on the site, they would essentially now need another variance. The amount of parking on the site, you know, you gotta remember, there's gonna be employees there, you might have like, you know, 6 spaces, you could have up to 6 spaces for employees.
Right.
You have 50, 60 seats inside the building, you're ultimately gonna have people driving to the site. You have,
Okay, 56, I forgot what the inside.
yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
wondering, at some point, I think in Upper Darby, certain areas are gonna need less parking
Well, we do.
than they did 50 years ago.
Yeah, and I think Josh could probably talk a little more about it, but we do have a 20% transit credit in certain sections of the ordinance, depending on what zone you're in. I don't know if this is in that zone, but Josh is pretty familiar with that.
But like, for instance, we have one space here, which I typically wouldn't even locate one single space on its own, but to achieve the zoning that we needed, we added in there. But the reality is that's gonna be a parking space for like the manager. You know, that they're gonna park back here. And like was stated, maybe a few of these that are further back away from the doors are the areas where you're gonna have your employees park and try to maximize the areas that are closest to the doors for patrons.
Another consideration in that same vein is that, or at least I've noticed this up and down Baltimore Pike with all the fast food places. In fact, I think there's a Burger King there as well, if I'm not mistaken. But
They're building one on Baltimore Pike, right? Is that
they're
you?
building a Wendy's.
Not myself, no.
I
Is there a
think there's-
Wendy's?
Yeah, I think there currently is a Burger King.
Okay.
But one thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if this is Burger King's model or not, I don't even know if you would know, but for, like those food pickup services, like Grubhub and Postmates and all that stuff, Uber Eats, they don't pick up in the drive-through. They make them park and you come to the door. And so while I think it makes sense that a lot of people aren't going in anymore, I've noticed like a steep increase with that.
Mhm.
Because they just don't let them pick up.
Oh,
in
so
the
you need the
drive-through.
parking spaces.
So you might need the parking spaces for, otherwise they'll just, I don't know what they do actually.
Right.
Can you
Yeah.
park in the street there?
I don't,
Patterson, I would think.
Well, over 69th Street, I guess you could, it might not be there when you come back, but I mean, being hit, not.
No, I think there's, some parking out there. I'm not 100% sure.
There's also a bus stop.
There's a bus stop there, yeah.
yeah, and unfortunately, even when there's street parking, it's not something that, from a commercial development standpoint, I can't recall an instance where we've really used that towards a credit on what we're doing on site, because you just don't, you have no control over who's gonna park there. If they decide that they're gonna park their car there for a month and block spaces that, would have been for the development. So we really do try to make sure that we can get what we have on site. And I will tell you that this is, relatively speaking, low from the number of spaces. But the days that you're talking about are long gone. We have some locations where they have 70, existing locations that they're rehabbing, they have 70-something parking spaces, and nobody's ever in them. And we don't want to pave just to pave, but we think that the number that we have here works for this size building. And, the services that were talked about, Grubhub and others, whether or not they can use the drive-through, I think the latest is that they are allowing them to come through. They just have to, obviously come up and announce that they're there from Grubhub or whatever it might be, and then they can come around and pick up. But I think for the most part, and in some areas, they will actually designate parking spaces, because that's what people are doing.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go out and about anymore, or if they are, they're on the move. So let's get it and keep going.
ADA?
Yes, so ADA, we have one parking space on our site. It will be van accessible. By code, we're only required to have one space if you're less than 25 spaces total on the site. So we have one space designated here with a loading area, and then the crosswalk coming directly to the front doors. The ADA from the street side, like I said, it really has to do with grade. Otherwise, we probably would try to say, let's take it off of 69th, because that's, your primary traffic. But from a grade standpoint, we just can't make that work for wheelchair accessibility. So that's coming off of Patterson. It will cross the drive-through. And unfortunately, when you have fast food, you always have to cross the drive-through. The drive-through is always right up next to the building. So at some point, the pedestrians have to cross that. But people are familiar enough, right? It's like gas stations. There's this wide open space outside, and you think, wow, this just looks like it's going to be chaos. But people know how to do it. They figure it out, how to get to the pumps, how to get to where they need to go. It's similar with this. So this
Well,
is,
the L formation, some people can get to the building without going into a car path. They come out of 69th Street, look around, go out Patterson. The car people don't have to go in front of the drive-through people. You were saying pedestrians always have to go through the drive-through lane.
at some point, if you're parking on either side, at some point, you've got to cross, people that are coming through the drive-through.
Oh, right,
The
oh,
park-
yeah. Just motors, not necessarily drive-through, okay.
Correct, yeah, so you're gonna have to, have some gaps there or whatever. Obviously, when you have a drive-through, it's a slow, fairly controlled environment here. This will need to be signed, obviously, with, pedestrian signs so that people see it there. But the access from an ADA standpoint coming off of Patterson will be to cross the back of the building to the main entrance here. There is a door back here, but that's a service door at the very back side.
And the grade,
The
elevation for that ramp?
Yeah, so this, if you think of it, the building is obviously, it's elevated up above 69th Street, but this area in here is the flattest area that we have on our site. So there, it will comply with ADA standards in terms of 2% cross slopes, no more than, 5% as you're heading in. So where we have it designed is to make sure that we can hit those grade requirements that ADA makes us have. Okay. So there are some waivers. We did talk with your engineer and just kind of ran through the letter as it came out the other day, talked through some of the things that we were, and I won't go point by point through the letter and take up any more of your time on the other aspect, but if I could just kind of go through the relief that we are asking for as it relates to the subdivision and land development ordinance. And then if you have any questions or, you know, want to discuss those, would that be acceptable? And then we could more or less assume that anything else that's in the letter is something that we will comply with or we will address at some point in time, okay? So we did put together a letter that I sent over today. There was one waiver that I realized after the fact in the letter from Mike's office didn't make it into this, so I'll just point that out and go through that one. The first that we were asking for is to sorry, okay. The first waiver that we were asking for is relative to a preliminary and a final plan, that we wanted to, if we could, combine that so that we save, you know, just coming down here for another trip, but if you want to see me down here again, I'm happy to. The second that we were asking for was related to right-of-way widths. So we are showing the existing right-of-way that's out there today. I think it's 70 feet on 69th Street. It's 40 feet on Patterson. So those are the existing right-of-ways as they stand today. As was mentioned, PennDOT owns 69th Street, and we've run into this on, you know, any project that we're along a PennDOT road. PennDOT doesn't take any additional right-of-way beyond what they need. And at this point, you know, you have actually a fairly wide sidewalk there. We talked about it with your traffic engineer as well, Mr. Federico. He was not aware of any additional improvements that PennDOT was looking to make, and actually the lane widths out there are fairly wide, whether or not it accommodates a bike lane or what, but we also know that we have to go through an HOP process for this. So if PennDOT does determine that they want or need additional right-of-way, we're gonna have to address it. And honestly, it's going to be tough. If they do, it could end up impacting us to a point where, you know, it makes the site infeasible. We hope that that doesn't happen, but just due to grades, that's really it. Elevation is our biggest challenge. We've got to get that building up above the flood line, because if we don't get that building above the flood line, the first flood that comes through and destroys this building, everything's out the door. There's just no way that Burger King is going to invest the time, effort, and money into rehabbing a site like this and then have it wiped out in the first flood. So that's our biggest challenge right now. So we,
I didn't follow. You said, what, you want PennDOT to do what? To move forward? What do you want PennDOT to do?
not to do anything in particular, I'm just saying that we have to go through a highway occupancy permit process. So we have to apply for and obtain a highway occupancy permit for our driveway. And in doing so, they're going to review everything along our frontage. They're going to review the intersection, they're going to review our frontage, our improvements, how we have them. And if they said, listen, we need, you know, for future widening purposes, we need more right-of-way,
Oh, I see.
we would have to, you know, figure out a way to make that work. Or conversely, we might say it doesn't, and we can't get there and have to move on, so.
But they don't have anything on the drawing board as of now.
No, so not to my knowledge, and not to Al Federico's knowledge. And what he's talking about now is just that our Saldo has a requirement of an 80-foot right-of-way on 69.
Oh.
Now they have 70, so it'd be an additional 5 foot on the property.
Okay.
Which I think what the engineer is saying is that if we required that extra 5 feet, it may make his development not feasible, and that's why he's requesting that waiver.
Right.
Okay.
So, right, and that would apply on both sides. So the one was, I think, right, it was going to 80-foot right-of-way on 69th Street and I think 50 feet on Patterson. So and again, when you look at the half width of the road, it would be an additional 5 feet on either side of that. So those 5 feet are critical for a site like this. We just don't have the space available to us there. We think we're doing the best that we can with it. We are still giving, you know, as much towards those outside edges that if, you know, there needs to be a sidewalk reconfiguration or something like that, that could still occur. It's not right up on the curb line. If you go back to the plan, I just show where the right-of-way line is, just so you see, because there are some locations that we have where the right-of-way is right on the curb, and that's not the case here. The right-of-way is beyond the sidewalk in most cases along our entire frontage. So if you could just kind of, yeah. So, where's my right-of-way line? So we're showing actually, I think, a half-width right-of-way that comes. It's tough. It's right here. So you can see that part of the sidewalk jogs back a little bit here where we have that island, and then it comes back down in, but that so there is some width still there from the right-of-way to the road, and that exists on both sides. We just can't give more at this point in time. So that was a waiver that we were asking for. The third waiver, do you want me to list the actual sections? Would that be helpful?
No, just read through the waiver letter, and
Okay.
then I think that should be fine.
Okay.
Explain, yeah.
So, just because, I'm sure this is being recorded, the first one for the preliminary final was Saldo Section 300-1. The second one for the right-of-way was Section 803.B.1. The third one that we're asking for is from 805.A.3, and that's for the maximum grade of a driveway. The maximum grade by the ordinance is 4%. And we're just not able to achieve that here. So what we did talk about was trying to keep kind of if you were leaving the site where you're right about to leave the site where you're parked waiting to make a turn, trying to keep that as close as possible to 4%. And actually PennDOT requirements are going to put us in that range, somewhere between 4 and maybe 6 at the most. Typically what PennDOT's looking for is a grade change of less than 8%. So if you think of most roadways are supposed to have they call it a crown, but it's supposed to be 2% graded away from either side, that they don't want it going up more than 6% because then you're potentially bottoming out your car as you make that entrance or you make that exit. So 6% is the maximum that they typically allow there. We've got sidewalk to contend with, we've got pedestrians to contend with. So that area where we exit out to 69th and that area where we meet Patterson, we're going to try to keep that as low as we possibly can from a percentage standpoint, and then kind of bring the grade up a little bit higher. In some cases, I think what we looked at was close to 9% in the area leaving the drive-through. Again, this is all about, I just want to be clear, this is all about the finished floor elevation of that building. We have it about, I think it's 1 foot above the 100-year storm elevation, which is really where we need to be. Typically, from a code standpoint, when we're looking at flood insurance, they want it to be 1.5 feet. So we'd be another even 6 inches above that. But in this case, we're 1 foot above that 100-year flood elevation. So that is driving everything. It's not just because we just love, designing to, beyond what the requirements are. Frankly, typically we do want to keep driveways in the order of maybe 6 to 7%. Parking areas, we're looking at 4 to 5 would be an absolute max. When you start to get into those, that's when if you're parked on a little bit of a side slope, you get above 4%. When you open your door, it either falls open or it falls closed. So I will tell you that our parking areas and the areas around the building are designed to those standards. So we're not putting the slope there, but we have to make up that grade within the driveways. So we did talk about taking another look at it, taking another run, seeing where we could soften this to where we can. But the bottom line is we're never going to get to 4% because our building elevation won't allow it. So that was another waiver that we were asking for. So the next one was from Saldo Section 805.C.2, and that was from the requirement to provide a minimum spacing of 100 feet measured at the curb line between the center line of any exit or entrance or exit drive and the nearest curb line to a street parallel or another access drive. So we're asking for that because we've got the existing driveway location on 69th Street, like I said. Where we have it located is really as far north or west, if you're looking at the plan, as we could possibly make it. It matches the existing location that's out there, but it's closer than 100 feet to the Wawa. But it's closer to 100 feet to the Wawa's driveway today. It's not, that is not changing. And there was, I think, another portion of that. No, there's another section which I'll get to later, which is in the same vein of that. Actually, I'll touch base on that one now, then I'll jump back to the one that we also needed to add. So the other was from section 805C3. So it's 805C2 is the one I just talked about, and then 805C3 talks about the separation distance of non-residential driveways on opposite sides of the street. I think if you look at where this driveway is, there's another driveway to the shopping center that's like almost at the intersection. It's kind of creating a fourth leg to that intersection, and it's 140 feet from the center line of their driveway to the center line of ours. But 10 feet further for us makes all this alignment just off from where we need it to be. So we're at 140 instead of the 150 required by the code. So that was the other portion of that related to it. Okay, so going back to the one that I missed putting this in the letter. So if you have a copy of the letter, this one was not in there. But it's 806C7, which again, we did talk about with your engineer. And that was to allow a radius of curvature on curb that's less than 5 feet. So typically you have a 5-foot minimum radius. And that's so that a car can swing into a parking space or whatever. The only areas that we have that, there's a few. If you could maybe come out a little bit here. So you've got one here, which is a little less than that. And again, that's just to try to get that curb return back so that the sweep of the vehicle coming this way. But this is not a curve that you're turning around. It's really just a transition between this straight curb to that curved curb, so it comes down to a pinch point. The others that we have, this one's a little wider. Again, you're making a sweep into a parking space, even though this is your loading area there. You come a little bit further down. The other ones are, and these ones aren't labeled, but the other ones are on the kind of the ends of the island. So where that island splits for that second order point is where you have less than a 5-foot. But again, you're not turning around it. It's just forcing that split and then bringing you back together. Here as well, this is where you're exiting. No one's coming in and trying to make a hard turn, nor do we want them to. So part of this is about the visual restriction as well, right? So if we have the ability, frankly, we could make this a wider curb turn here, but it's just going to lend itself to somebody trying to do it. You give somebody the path, they will figure it out. I've done, work for, you mentioned Starbucks before. There's a location that I was working on where they didn't have a bypass lane like you were talking about. They didn't have a sufficient enough bypass lane. So, if you get between people and their coffee, they get real angry. People would literally drive the wrong way around the building because the parking was all at the far side of the building, and it would get blocked by the people trying to get to the drive-through. So people would zoom around the other side of the building against traffic just to try to get to the parking in the back. So again, part of this is, it's not just because we don't want to, it's because it's a safer movement. Similarly here, you have a 3-foot radius. We don't want people trying to make that turn in where the entrance is at that point. We did talk about trying to expand these radii a little bit as you're making the turn onto the street, and we believe that we can do that. Right now, those comply, they're 5 feet, but if we can get them to 8 or 10, we're gonna make that change. So those, I think, and here was another one, same as what you saw over there. No one's making a turn around it. It's just the transition between those two curbs. Okay? Again, that was section, I believe, 806C7. I know it seems like a lot. There's two more. But hopefully as I talk through them, you're understanding the why. This one I actually made mention of earlier. This is 806.C.1.C. And this was to allow less than a 15-foot wide drive aisle adjacent to the building. And that's only on the one side. It's on that northern side of the building where we had 14 feet. It was here, at this point here. So we've got a 10-foot wide lane for the drive-through, which is typical. And typically, people will even hug a little bit closer to the curb line there. So the reality is that there's going to be a little bit more room than the 14 feet that you're going to see. But for purposes of design, we have 14 feet there. We have an angle parking space, so nobody will have the idea of trying to back out this way and try to go against traffic to get back out. So again, we think that's a safe movement there to be able to accommodate that. All right, last one. Oh, I apologize. It was on there. It was on there. So back to the other one that I said was not, which was 806C7, that is on there as item 7. So those are the waivers that we were asking for. Again, I hope with the explanation that I gave that you would give consideration to those. Everything else that's within the letter from Mike's office was either, engineering items for us to address, some things for us to look at, some outside permits that we know that we need to get. We know that we need to, deal with utilities and PennDOT and all of those things along the way. So we still have some steps ahead of us, but.
Has the sign already been approved, and how high is it?
We did go through signage with the zoning hearing board. I
Well,
don't,
is it within the, you didn't need relief for the sign, did you?
I don't believe, for relative to the freestanding sign, I don't believe so. I think the only relief that we needed from my recollection, and I apologize if I'm wrong, but again, we did go before the zoning board on it. I think it was the number of signs on the building. And it wasn't that they were substantially larger. I think when we looked at the sides of the building that we were allowed to put it on, which was like, one sign on Patterson and one sign on 69th Street, we had like 2 on Patterson, but when you look at the size, it was actually smaller than what we were allowed by 1. And we had 1 on 69th, and then I think there was 1 over the doors that actually faces towards the Wawa, which was not technically allowed because it wasn't facing a street. So it was like the number of signs, but when you looked at the overall area, it was less than what we would have been allowed if we just had one singular sign there.
So how many signs are there? I didn't follow that. I'm
I
sorry.
think there's 4 on the building.
And how tall is the one out by the road? Do you know?
I don't.
Okay, I'll look at it.
But they didn't need relief, so it can't be, it's,
Yeah.
whatever it is, it's.
Yeah, we
allowed.
didn't request, from my recollection, a height variance. So typically, I want to say they're on the order of like 20 feet, 20 to 25. The only time really, honestly, that we go substantially larger than that is if you're trying to draw people off of a highway.
I just think it's so fun when you go into like super nice neighborhoods, Burger King, McDonald's, everybody, their signs look like Philadelphia Country Club.
Yeah.
So beautiful. And then as the socioeconomic average income drives, the signs get higher and higher.
Well, I'm not going to say that I don't sit in on those meetings where they determine where and what they're going to use. Generally speaking, it's about the speed of traffic, the amount of traffic that's coming through, and where you need somebody to recognize that is coming up so that they can make a safe turn. Because sometimes, to your earlier point, you make this sign that doesn't look anything like a Burger King sign that you've seen before, and by the time you notice it, you're jamming the brakes and you're trying to make a hard turn, you're creating an unsafe situation. So typically, if we are going for signage relief, those are some of the things that we talk about, is the speed of vehicles and making sure that people make that transition safely.
So the Burger King purchased this lot, they own it now, or they have a lease agreement to?
It's not
Yeah.
Burger King, it's some investor.
Well,
Yeah,
Okay.
right, yeah, so it is a franchisee, and that's typically, there's, I don't even know how many stores are corporate-owned. I think most of them are franchisee-operated stores. But I think they have there's an agreement with the existing landowner towards, my understanding is a purchase. It's either a purchase or a lease, but there's an agreement that they have in place that upon, getting all their approvals,
Okay.
that they will take over. But I can tell you that I have worked with this franchisee for, we've done a lot of development probably in the last 5 or 6 years, but then even dating back to like 2007, 2008, when they were looking and doing a fair amount of work. They really do take care of their stores. They really, really do. They take a lot of pride in it. Typically, they go above and beyond when it comes to landscaping. When we show landscaping on our plan, we're usually looking at compliance with an ordinance. And typically speaking, they go above and beyond that in what they put out there because they want their stores to look good. So, like I said, I've been working with them a long time.
The one comment I had was that, there has been significant flooding as you're trying to there's been such significant flooding in that part of town. The amount of resources we've had to bring out from the fire department and so on, the FEMA grants we're going through, trying to clean up after the last 2 floods. I'm really encouraged to see how much effort you're going through to still try to work with a space to try to develop it to a viable commercial use, adding green space, not taking it away, having a rain garden. I'm really hopeful that if this all works, other developers will look at that as a viable space. Like, this isn't just a flooded out place and we don't want to get involved with it, that this could be, yours is almost like an example of, yeah, you can work with the water, you can do green space, you can do a rain garden and still have a viable commercial product.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that because I was not exaggerating when I said we'd taken at least 10 different stabs at trying to come up with a layout that worked functionally and met as many of the zoning requirements as we could, met as many of the subdivision land development requirements as we could. And we hope that the township views this as the way that you just described, that this is an opportunity, obviously, to take a fairly blighted site and revamp it, turn it into something that hopefully the township can be proud of and would be an example for others to say, it can be done. You just got to maybe think a little bit outside the box.
I don't have any more. No. Yep.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Is there any, I guess, just in terms of how your boards work, do you take any sort of formal action? Do you make a recommendation?
Yes,
or-
we will now
Okay. You're just
make a
closing out
recommendation.
with me.
Close, yeah, and
Got
we
it.
will make a recommendation to go to our council.
Street address there.
It is,
490 South 60.
yeah, 490
South 60.
South 69th
Oh,
Street.
right in front of me, 490. Oh, thank you. Okay, I should put my glasses on, thank you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the dialogue.
Thank you.
Sorry it was longer than 15 minutes.
So I can entertain motions to, oh, do we have public? Would anybody from the public? Oh, we do have a member of the public. Oh, okay. So we have no public at hand. Oh. Would. But he is a resident. so. Scott, do you have any public comment before we move on?
Oh, just call upon the honorable member there to return my keys.
So would the commission like to make a motion for recommendation to the council on this particular development plan?
I'll make the motion to recommend.
And would you like to include the requested waivers?
Yes.
Second? The waivers?
Yes.
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice presentation.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really good. Thank you.
Do I get to pick the trees?
Oh, my gosh.
I would say, honestly, if there are particular ones that the township would like, beyond what's, we're trying to come up with a compliant plan. If there are particular trees, as long as the developer agrees to it, I'm happy to take that too.
Something that the lantern flies don't.
I haven't figured out, do we know what that is? Yeah,
There is nothing.
well, like I said, I appreciate the dialogue. Honestly, it's a lot easier to give a presentation when it's like that, instead of just standing up there and talking, not knowing if anyone's even paying attention.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. And this would go in September, you were saying, I think, to the council?
That would be our next step.
No, he said
So
his name.
after tonight, we work on a resolution.
Okay. Should we resubmit between now and then?
You can, if you want to, yeah.
I just don't want, like, sometimes
It
I
won't,
can,
it won't mess up the flow.
it won't confuse the
It
issue.
won't confuse it.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Next agenda item is zoning, but I don't think we have any zoning to review. And, oh, we're going to speed right along because we don't have any old business or new business. So,
I'm good.
we're good? All good? Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay. Thank you all very much.